He pulled her from the wreck when everyone else left her behind. The sky burned with fire. Debris from the destroyed ships rained down across the battlefield. Twisted metal and broken bodies floated in low gravity as emergency lights blinked weakly across the shattered remains of Orbit Station V-12. Inside a smoking corridor, Reed, a young human engineer, moved quickly, coughing through the smoke. His helmet's filter hissed as it cleaned the air. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had only come to repair the station's life support system. But now, after the surprise alien attack, he was one of the few survivors trying to help others escape. His comm buzzed. "Reed, get to the drop shuttle now, station's breaking apart." "I'm checking one last section," Reed replied. "You don't have time, leave it." But he didn't listen. A strange signal as he moved through the damaged hall. His scanner picked up a faint life sign. Just one. Very weak. Near a sealed compartment ahead. The door was half buried under a collapsed beam. He hesitated. It could be a body. It could be nothing, but he couldn't walk away. He dropped his tool bag and began lifting the debris. His hands bled from sharp metal edges. Sparks shot from a broken wire. He didn't stop. Finally, the panel groaned and gave way. Inside was a ruined escape pod. Fire licked the walls. Steam hissed from a broken pipe. And in the middle of the wreck, she lay there. An alien woman. Unconscious. Her skin was pale gold, glowing faintly. Her long white hair was tangled with blood. Strange symbols marked her collar. She was wearing royal robes torn and burned, but her body was still, barely breathing. Reed's eyes widened. She wasn't just any alien. She was Illyrian, a high-born race known for their strict customs and advanced tech. Damn. He looked at the damage, then at her. He knew the rules. Humans weren't supposed to touch Illyrian royalty. There were political consequences, cultural lines, dangerous laws. His comm buzzed again. "Reed, get out, final warning." He looked down. At her. She might die in minutes. He made a choice. "I'm bringing someone," he said into the comm. He lifted her gently, placing her over his shoulder. She was light but hot to the touch. A fever? Or maybe something else? Her breathing was shallow. Her heart was slowing. Reed ran. The corridors behind him collapsed. Explosions rocked the walls. He reached the shuttle just as the doors were closing. "What the hell is that?" the pilot shouted, seeing the alien in his arms. "She's alive. She's Illyrian. You can't just bring her." "I'm not leaving her." There was a moment of silence. Then the pilot opened the door wider. "Fine. Strap her down." They launched seconds later as the station exploded behind them. Aboard the human cruiser hours later, Reed stood outside the med bay, arms crossed, clothes dirty and burned. His fingers were still bleeding. Inside, doctors worked around the alien girl. Machines beeped softly. Lights blinked on her body. One nurse walked out. "She's stable. For now," she said. "If you hadn't pulled her out, she'd be dead." Reed nodded. "Will she wake up?" "Maybe. Maybe not." He watched through the glass. There was something peaceful about her now. Her chest rising and falling. Her hands twitching slightly. A few crew members passed by and stared. "You touched a royal? You're crazy, man. You know the law, right?" Reed didn't answer. He didn't care. He had done what was right. Hours later, Reed sat by her bed. The doctors had left. The lights were dim. The ship flew quietly through space now, away from the war zone. The alien girl's eyes fluttered. He leaned forward. Her lips moved. A soft whisper escaped. "Varan. Damel." His translator beeped and tried to process the words. Reed blinked. On the screen, a simple translation appeared. Claimed. By honor. He frowned. "What does that mean?" Her eyes opened slightly, and for the first time she looked at him, confused, afraid, but not angry. And then, she reached out and touched his arm, just once, just softly. She looked at him with fear, then shocked him with a single word. The lights in the medbay were dim. The soft hum of machines filled the room. Tubes ran into the alien girl's arm, and her glowing skin slowly returned to its natural golden color. Reed sat beside her again, just like before. His jacket was folded on the chair. His hands were clean now, but his thoughts were not. He kept hearing the words she whispered earlier. Claimed, by honor. What did that mean? Was it just something she said in confusion, or was it something more? She woke again. A soft beep from the monitor. Reed looked up and saw her eyes open wide. She gasped and tried to sit up, breathing fast. Panic filled her glowing eyes as she looked around the strange human room. "It's okay," Reed said quickly, raising his hands. "You're safe. No one will hurt you." She stared at him, and then she spoke one word. Her voice was soft, but clear. "Shalvaren." His translator beeped again. "Chosen." Reed froze. "What?" She kept staring at him, almost in shock. Her lips trembled, her hands shook. He repeated softly, "What does that mean?" She closed her eyes for a second, then whispered, "You saved my life. Now, by my people's law, I am yours." Reed's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, what? That can't be right." She didn't answer. She just looked down, ashamed, confused, and scared. Later that day, the ship's captain, a strict woman named Commander Ray, called Reed into the meeting room. She looked serious. "We received a message from the Illyrian fleet," she said. "They confirmed the identity of the girl you rescued." Reed sat still. "And? She's not just anyone," Ray said. "She's High Lady Lyra Valenthal, second daughter of the royal line." Reed leaned back, stunned. "Royalty?" "She wasn't supposed to survive," Ray said. "Her people had already mourned her." There was a pause. Then the commander continued, more carefully. "They also sent a warning. Illyrian law states that anyone who saves a royal life forms a binding claim." Reed frowned. "You mean ownership?" "Not exactly, but close. They believe you are now her chosen protector, possibly her future mate." Reed stood up. "That's insane. I didn't agree to anything." "I believe you," Ray said. "But their culture is serious about this, and now that she called you Shalvaren, the bond has started." Back in the medbay, Lyra sat up slowly. Her wounds were healing well now. She wore a soft silver robe, and her long white hair had been cleaned. She looked peaceful, but when Reed entered, she looked down again. He sat across from her, not too close. "I have questions," he said. She nodded. "I expected that." "You said I'm your chosen. What does that mean?" Lyra didn't speak for a while. Then softly she answered, "In my people's law, royalty must never owe a life. If someone saves a royal, the bond must be honored. That person becomes more than a protector." Reed tried to stay calm. "What if I don't want that?" "You have the right to refuse," she said. "But if you do, I will be punished." His eyes widened. "Punished?" She nodded slowly. "If a bond is rejected, the royal is seen as unworthy of life. I would be exiled, or worse." Reed looked away, stunned. He hadn't asked for any of this. He had only tried to help. But now, this girl's life was still in his hands. She spoke. "Again, I don't expect you to accept. I don't ask for your love. I only want to live." Reed looked at her, really looked. She wasn't proud. She wasn't cold. She was just scared. But behind her fear, he saw something else. Strength. She had survived a crash, a burning wreck, and a galaxy that wanted her gone. "I didn't save you because of a law," he said finally. "I saved you because it was right." She looked up at him. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I know," she whispered. He refused to claim her, but her people had other plans. The stars outside the cruiser blinked quietly. Inside the ship, Reed stood near a large window, staring out at nothing. His arms were crossed, his thoughts heavy. Behind him the crew moved around, whispering. They weren't talking about the mission anymore, they were talking about him, and the alien girl he had saved. A message from Illyria Commander Ray walked up behind him. "They've arrived," she said. "Who?" Reed asked. "The Illyrian Royal. Guards, they're waiting to meet you." He turned around sharply. "They're here for Lyra?" She nodded. "And for you. They want to perform something called a formal bond recognition." Reed laughed bitterly. "No chance. I'm not performing anything. I didn't save her to own her." The commander looked serious. "That's not how they see it. And Reed, this isn't just personal anymore. It's political." The arrival 2 hours later, a royal shuttle docked. The doors opened and 4 tall figures in silver armor stepped onto the ship. Their eyes were glowing faint blue, and their armor shined with royal markings. Behind them walked a taller figure, cloaked in violet robes, an Illyrian priestess. Reed stood in the meeting hall with Lyra beside him. She looked nervous but calm. The priestess stepped forward and bowed slightly. "We greet the human Reed Malin, savior of House Valenthal." "I'm just a mechanic," Reed replied. The priestess smiled. "To us, you are much more." She raised a hand, and the guards stepped aside. One held a thin box. Inside was a glowing seal, a symbol of union in Illyrian law. "We are here to complete the bond. All that is left is your acceptance." Reed took a deep breath, then shook his head. "No." The room went silent. Lyra's eyes widened. "I didn't do this to claim her," he continued. "I won't sign anything, she's not mine." The priestess did not blink. "If you refuse," she said calmly, "you break the sacred circle, and the female, Lady Lyra, will lose her name, her rights, and her place. Her blood will be shamed." Reed turned to Lyra. "Is that true?" She nodded, her face pale. Reed turned back to the priestess. "There must be another way. The pressure builds later." Reed met with Commander Ray in her office. "You embarrassed them," she said. "I didn't agree to their laws," Reed answered. "You don't have to," Ray said. "But Lyra is still under your protection. If they see you as a traitor to their law, they might come for her. Or worse, and take her by force." Reed clenched his jaw. "Then I'll stop them." "Can you?" she asked. "They're royalty. They'll find a way." That night, Lyra sat alone in her quarters, staring at the small flame of a floating light orb. Reed knocked and entered quietly. She looked up. "You said no." "I don't want to own you," he said. "I know," she whispered. "But now, my people will see me as nothing." Reed sat beside her. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," she replied. "You were honest. But you'll suffer because of it." She touched his arm. "I already suffered. Being alive now, with choice. That's more than I had before." Reed looked into her eyes. "No one should lose everything just because I followed my heart." Lyra smiled softly. "You're the first man I've met whose heart is louder than the law." She asked to stay beside him, even if it wasn't love. The ship floated silently in deep space, far from war, far from home. Inside the living quarters, Lyra stood near a window, her long silver robe glowing faintly under the ship's soft lights. She watched the stars, her hands clasped in front of her, her heart heavy. Behind her, Reed entered slowly, holding 2 cups of warm liquid. He stopped when he saw her standing so still. "You didn't eat again," he said gently. She didn't turn. "I'm not hungry." He placed the cup on the table. A long silence passed. Then she finally spoke. "Your people call it freedom," she said. "But it feels like standing on a cliff, alone, cold." Reed walked closer. "You're not alone." "I'm not yours either," she whispered. He paused. "That's not what you want, is it?" She turned around. Her eyes were glowing but soft. I don't want to be a bond, a rule, a symbol. Her voice trembled. But I want to stay, even if it's not love, even if I'm just someone you don't turn away. Reed looked into her eyes. I didn't save you because of who you are. I saved you because I saw a person, not a princess. Lyra stepped closer. Then see me now. Not as Law's gift. Not as your prize. Just as a woman who wants to be near the only man who didn't walk past. My pain, later that night, Reed worked quietly in the maintenance bay repairing a cracked panel. Lyra sat on a nearby bench watching. She didn't speak, just watched the way he moved. Focused, calm, careful. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. But she had never felt safer than when she was with him. The next morning, a message came from the Illyrian High Council. It was cold and direct. Final notice. The bond must be completed. If not, we will retrieve her. You have 48 hours. Commander. Ray called Reed to her office. They're serious this time, she warned. They'll come for her. Let them, Reed said, jaw tight. You can't stop a whole royal fleet. I won't give her up, he replied. Not unless she wants to go. Back in her room, Reed sat across from Lyra. They gave us 48 hours, he said. Then they'll take you. Lyra nodded. I know. You have a choice, Reed said. You always will. She smiled sadly. I've already made it. He tilted his head. You have? I'm staying. Even if it means war? She stepped forward. Even if it means I have to fight for my freedom. With you. Beside you. Reed looked at her for a long moment. Then, finally, he reached out and gently took her hand, not as a claim, not as a bond, but as a promise. A quiet one. That night, Lyra wrote something in her language, a glowing symbol, and placed it on the wall of her room. Reed saw it the next morning. HFY asked, "What does it mean?" She smiled and said, "It means chosen, but free." He protected her from their law, but she took the risk for him. The countdown had begun. 48 hours had passed, and now, the Illyrian royal ship was near. Commander Ray stood on the bridge of the human cruiser, watching the screen. A massive silver and blue vessel hovered just outside firing range. It was elegant, beautiful, and dangerous. She turned to Reed. They're hailing us. Reed stood tall, arms crossed, jaw tight. Put it through. A glowing figure appeared. On the screen, it was the same Illyrian priestess from before. Time is over, human, she said calmly. We are here for Lady Lyra. She must return. If you deny the bond again, we will retrieve her by force. Reed didn't blink. She doesn't belong to you. She does, the priestess replied. By blood and by law. Reed's voice hardened. She's not a law, she's a person. The priestess raised an eyebrow, then let her choose, in front of both our people. The screen went dark. Commander Ray turned to Reed. They want a public answer. Reed nodded. Then we'll give them one. In the main hangar, the crew had gathered. So had the Illyrian guards, who entered with glowing staffs and sharp eyes. They stood in rows, silent like statues of silver. At the center stood Lyra. She wore the traditional royal robe again, glowing blue and white. Her hair was braided, her head held high. But her eyes searched the room, for him. Reed stepped out from the crowd. Everyone grew quiet. The priestess walked forward and held up the ceremonial seal. Reed Malin, she said. This is the final moment. Will you accept the bond with Lady Lyra Valenthal? Reed looked at the seal, then at Lyra, then back at the priestess. No, he said clearly. I won't accept this law. Gasps filled the air. The priestess nodded, not surprised. Then she must return with us now. She has no place in your world. The guards stepped forward, but before they could reach her, Lyra raised her hand. Wait. Everyone froze. She stepped toward the priestess, but then she turned and walked toward Reed. The room watched in complete silence. She stood in front of him, her eyes shining. "I know you don't want to own me," she said softly, "but I want to be by your side, not because of law, but because of choice." Reed's chest rose and fell with emotion. "Lyra, you don't have to do this." "I do," she whispered. Then she took his hand and placed it gently on her chest. In Illyrian culture, that single act meant voluntary bonding, chosen, not forced, a higher law, one that no council could break. The priestess's eyes widened. "She chose," someone whispered. "She chose him." Moments later, the Illyrians lowered their weapons. The priestess stepped forward, eyes serious but calm. "The bond is now complete, but only because she chose freely." She bowed slightly to Lyra. "Hi, lady. You are no longer our concern." The Illyrians turned and left. No fight, no war, just silence and respect. That evening, Reed and Lyra sat together outside the ship's rear deck, watching stars slowly move across the dark sky. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She smiled. "I know. That's why it mattered." Reed looked at her hand in his. "So, does this mean we're bonded?" She leaned her head on his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "It means we're free." Someone tried to steal her away, and he almost lost her forever. The ship was quiet. After the Illyrians left, life slowly returned to normal. Crew members stopped whispering, missions resumed, and for a short time, peace lived on board. But peace never stays long, especially when someone powerful wants what they can't have. It started with a shadow. Lyra was alone in the ship's garden room, an area filled with glowing plants and recycled air. She liked it there. It reminded her of Illyrian forests. She sat near a tall blue flower humming softly when she heard a soft sound behind her, a hiss. She turned and saw no one. Her heart raced. Then a hand grabbed her from behind. She tried to scream, but something sharp pressed against her neck. A voice whispered, "Stay quiet, Lady Lyra. You were never his." Meanwhile, Reed walked through the corridors, a small package in his hand. Inside it was a necklace, something simple he had made himself. It wasn't a royal gift, just human, just real. He smiled slightly, thinking of her, but when he reached the garden room, it was empty. The blue flower was crushed, and on the floor, a single drop of golden blood. Reed froze. Then he ran. "The search begins." The alarm was triggered. "Commander." Ray ordered a full scan of the ship. "Check every corner. Whoever did this had inside help." Reed checked every corridor, every storage room, calling her name. "Lyra." No answer. Then a signal came through. "Unauthorized shuttle just launched from Lower Bay." Reed's eyes narrowed. "Track it. In space." The stolen shuttle flew, fast, low, dodging radar. Inside, Lyra sat tied to a chair. Her wrists were sore, her lip bleeding. In front of her stood a tall Illyrian male. "Lord Tavar, a rival royal. I warned them," he said coldly. "You are not to mix with humans. You were promised to me." Lyra spat blood. "I chose him." Tavar slapped her. "You chose wrong." But before he could say more, an explosion rocked the shuttle. Outside, Reed's ship appeared. Weapons locked. He had followed her. The rescue Reed boarded the shuttle through the emergency hatch, blaster in hand. He moved fast. One shot. 2 guards down. He reached the control room and found Lyra, bruised and barely awake. Tavar pointed a weapon at her head. "Put your gun down, human," he shouted. Reed didn't blink. "You let her go, or I put you down." "You can't kill me," Tavar laughed. "I'm royalty." Reed aimed between his eyes. "She's more than that. She's my family." Tavar hesitated. Lyra used the moment. She kicked backward, knocking him off balance. Reed fired. Tavar dropped. Alive. but bleeding. Back on the cruiser, Lyra lay on the medical bed. Her eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was Reed sitting beside her, holding her hand. "You came," she whispered. "Every time," he said softly. Tears filled her eyes. "I thought I lost you." He leaned closer. "You never will." That night, Lyra stood at the window staring at the stars. Reed walked up beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm healing." He placed the small necklace around her neck. "What's this?" she asked. "It's not royal," he said, "but it's from me." She touched it gently and smiled. "I'd rather wear this than a crown." She stood beside him, not as a bonded mate, but as his equal. The sky above the colony world was soft purple. A gentle breeze moved across the grass fields. Children, human and Illyrian, laughed and ran between solar panels and gardens. The air smelled of new life, and in the center of it all stood Lyra, dressed not in royal robes, but in a simple tunic and boots. Free, strong. Home. 1 year later. After the war ended, the Human Alliance offered Lyra a chance to return to her people, to her title, her palace. She refused. Instead, she and Reed helped build Haven 9, a new colony where humans and aliens lived side by side, with no chains of law or blood, only choice, only peace. That morning, Reed stood in front of a small crowd adjusting a device on a stone pedestal. His hair was a little longer now, his face older, but calmer. He cleared his throat. "Today," he said, "we open the gates of this colony not as a government, not as soldiers, but as people, as equals." The crowd clapped. Then Lyra stepped forward. She stood beside Reed and looked at the crowd. "I was once saved by law," she said softly, "then rejected by it." She looked at Reed. "And then I was saved by a man. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to." She turned back to the people. "No one here will ever be claimed. No one here will ever be owned. In Haven 9, we belong only to ourselves, and to each other by choice." After the ceremony, Reed and Lyra walked through the fields. A small child ran up to them, a girl with pale golden skin and dark human eyes. "Papa! Mama!" They lifted her together and laughed. Lyra kissed the girl's cheek. "Your name means freedom in my language." Reed smiled. "It also means fighter in mine." They sat under a tall tree, the sun setting in the distance. Lyra leaned against him. "I never imagined this kind of future," she whispered. "Neither did I," he said. "But we made it." She looked into his eyes. "Not as your bond. Not as your duty, but as your equal." He nodded. "And always," he said, "as my partner." Final scene. The stars lit up the sky above Haven 9. A place where law once tried to divide hearts, but love and choice had built something stronger. Not a kingdom, not a prison, but a home, together, forever.